Hey, and we are live on the internet. Hello, internet. I'm Richard Byrne, joined tonight by Keith Hughes of Hughes History fame. And we will be joined by Tom Ritchie shortly. He was here and he just disappeared. He'll be back. We're experiencing a little technical difficulty with Google Hangouts on air, as almost everybody who uses Google Hangouts on air has experienced at one time or another. So we're here to talk about teaching with video and how to get started teaching with video. Full disclosure, we are teaching a class at the end of the month all about how to teach with video, from soup to nuts, how to get started, how to evaluate your students, your own work, the assessment piece. We'll look at all of that stuff at the end of the month, but we want to give people a little some things that they can start out with. So let's start with this. Who is Keith? I know some of you know me, some of you know Keith, but some of you don't know both of us. So Keith, why don't you say hello to the internet?
Hello, internets. And if you don't know me, my name is Keith Hughes. I was a classroom teacher for about 15 years. I taught social studies, AP government, AP US. I do tech coaching for Buffalo now, but I've been in Buffalo since the beginning of my career. I launched a YouTube channel about a decade ago, and it's, I think, hopefully helped a lot of kids and a lot of teachers in classrooms around the world. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about teaching with video, and not just from a production standpoint, but also from a student production standpoint. I did a lot of that in my room. So I'm excited to talk about video, all around about video.
Cool. Where are we?
Here.
Hey, and look, Tom's here now. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Richard, glad to be here. You know, I'm just excited that my video was working. The funniest thing about this is often, you know, when we do these things, we're still not exempt from technical difficulties. But if you teach middle school or high school social studies, you may have run into some of my videos on AP European history or US history. Some of my stuff's for more of a general audience, you know, maybe overlapping with some of Keith's work a little bit, and every once in a while I'll do something on government or something like that. But you know, it is something that is exciting, and it's really an honor here to be, you know, invited by Richard to take part in this, because I get a lot of questions from teachers. You know, they'll email me things, especially as far as asking questions about how do I make videos that have me on the video and I've got slides, because there are, you know, live action videos and then there are slide casts, and a lot of my videos are kind of a hybrid of that. So, you know, this is going to be great for people who've wanted to know, you know, how is it that you do that? What equipment do you use? What programs? And, you know, while it costs some money, it is relatively inexpensive. And if I would have had somebody telling me some things right at the beginning, I could have saved myself a lot of money by not buying the wrong stuff, or not buying stuff. I see Keith nodding his head over there. And Richard, you know, sometimes you buy something and then you realize that, wait, what I really needed was actually cheaper than that. And, you know, I've got a ton of stuff that I don't even use anymore. So sometimes you know, it's great to be able to chat, and even before you get started or you're just getting started. So very glad to be here. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, you know, I wish that I'd had some guidance in so many ways when I got started doing these things. In fact, speaking of spending money on things you don't need to spend money on, I spent money on some software the other day that turns out doesn't do at all what I thought it was going to do. So that was $79 down the drain, but you live and learn, and I'll pass that little bit of information on to anyone who ever asks me about email software that you do or don't need. But anyway, moving on. You know, Keith has been making videos, putting them on YouTube for about 10 years. You've been doing it. Tom's been doing it for not quite as long, but you know, Tom still has 80,000 people following him, or more than that on YouTube, and I just have a measly 9,000 or so people watching my screencast videos. But to get back to Tom's point about the cost, right? The cost of making videos. Most of us have the equipment we need to get started, right? You know, in terms of what do you need to get started, it could really just be this, right? It could be your phone. This is a cheap phone too, by the way. This is This is the one that Verizon gives you when you break your good phone and you don't have insurance for a new one. This is what that one is. And I'm still making videos with it. And it works pretty well. So you don't need to spend a whole lot of money, but there are some favorite tools that we all have. Keith, what's your favorite tool for someone who wants to get started making video lessons?
Well, I agree with you that you shouldn't let cost get in the way. I mean, I think if you don't have the funds to talk about some of the stuff that I might be using now that I love, there's nothing wrong with using your smartphone and just, getting that steady and getting a decent shot. And you shouldn't let that be a barrier. Don't let mistakes, don't let technology get in the way. Just start creating. But I do have some favorites. I've used PCs before, and I know Tom uses PCs, and he'll be talking more about that. But I do love my MacBook. I'm not going to lie. So later when we do that course, I'll be talking a lot more about starting with iMovie. I use Final Cut now, but I used iMovie for 6 or 7 years. So that's a free program if you have that Mac. So we can show you how to do that. But in terms of camera equipment, I'm not going to lie. I do have a Canon DSLR D80 that I love very, very much. But I used a lot of equipment. In the beginning, it was whatever I could get my hands on. Whoever I could beg to get equipment from my district who would eventually give me something just to get me to leave them alone. That works too sometimes. But, don't let that get in the way. But, a MacBook Pro and a camera, or a MacBook Air or a Mac or any PC is enough to get started.
So let me ask you a quick follow-up about iMovie, because I used iMovie for quite a while too. I made the switch out of Mac actually about 3 years ago. It's been 3 years since I've used a Mac on a regular basis. What do you see people make as their number one mistake, or what's the rookie mistake you see with iMovie when you're trying to get something looking good on iMovie?
Sure. I think in terms of a technical standpoint, like something that I would point out right away in terms of making something that looks fluid and not choppy is I love Ken Burns. Like, God love Ken Burns. But that Ken Burns effect is going to kill us all. So I'm a big fan of video and movement, and there's nothing wrong with doing a voiceover video with still imagery. But throwing still images that do that 5-second zoom and thinking that's going to engage or look good, I think that might be a mistake. So using steady, nice, large images and really, having them on the screen just, positioned in a way that looks good. I'll talk about design when we do that webinar and some basic, advice, but a lot of it is being intuitive and just looking back and looking at the video. And if you don't like it, change it. So my biggest piece of advice is be careful about using a lot of still images, especially with that Mr. Ken Burns effect.
I love Ken Burns too. I mean, all three of us are history teachers, so I think you have to love Ken Burns as part of getting your history degree these days. I think that's a prerequisite. Now, I'm going to come to you, Tom, in a second, but I'm going to give everyone my favorite tip. It's a very low-tech tip. This is a $0 tip. When you're doing something live like we are tonight, or you're going to do just a simple screencast video with your face on it, and you're out in your barn like I am, and it's 42 degrees in here, and so you have to wear your hat, which is good because it hides my gray hair. Here's my really low-tech tip, but it's really important. Take a stack of books, and I have a stack right here, and Tom's got a stack. For me, it's these 4 books, and I stack them up under my laptop so that my webcam is looking at me and not up my nose. Because I think we've all seen those videos where someone's staring down and you're looking up, right? So I use a stack of books, very low tech, underneath my laptop, gets the webcam up a little bit. So Tom, on that, oh, what are you doing there, Tom? Tom's
Yeah,
about to show
I'm
us
just
something.
showing off my book. Like I've got a textbook here. There's the table, there's my large textbook, and then here is the there's the screen. So Richard, yeah, we didn't even coordinate that, but yeah, that's one of the biggest things if I do anything, because really it's not just for video quality, but it's getting just my neck. If you spend a lot of time looking down, you really do have to be cognizant of how ergonomic your situation is and all of that, because video editing, lots of time sitting, it's kind of funny because it's like Keith's the oldest one here and he's got the least amount of gray hair. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, that's, I mean, I don't know.
27.
Maybe we'll have to do some sort of, class from you on staying young or whatever. But yeah, I think that the book thing is awesome. And I think really a lot of people, when they first get started doing something like this, where you are, you're sitting down. Now, of course, all I've got here, are my overhead lights. It's like, make sure you got good lighting, but I've got like just fluorescent lights. Gosh, that's a rickety ceiling in my basement. And then just a simple umbrella light that if I do it on Hangouts, it washes me out, but I've got this on my actual videos. And this thing is, I think I paid less than $50 for it a while back. And it just adds a little bit of extra light when I need it, because one of the biggest things is you want to make sure that your eyes, like people can see your eyes. Like sometimes, if you've just got overhead light on, it'll just like, it's all dark, and, you want to make sure that you look safe for people. Now, the other thing here, that I think is really important, and this is something I'll just show off now. We show off some free stuff, but this here has been my best friend, this Zoom H1 mic. Now, they're not paying me. I wish I were that big of a deal. But this mic, it's about $125, and it's made for recording lectures. And it's got a little, one of the little micro SD cards you put in there, you put in your computer. Now, of course, when you're just starting off, that probably isn't as big of a deal, but finding a microphone, which there's a microphone that I got a hold of for my video broadcasting course at school, that it was only about a $30 microphone. So depending, and that's the other thing that really, I wish that I would have had an iPhone 7 when I started out, because when Keith started out, and he calls these his hostage taker videos from back in like 2008 or so. But, when I was just starting out in like 2012, it's like this was like, costing me money. And, there's only so much you're going to want to invest. But now everybody's got a camera that, if you're in a well-lit room or you're looking out a window or something like that, you've got and you're in a quiet room, you've got everything you need. And, the biggest thing, I think Keith kind of hinted at this, is when you get started, keep going, okay? Because it's one thing, like, I mean, I would just cringe every time I edited a video. Keith, I don't know if you remember those days where you think, like, this is just so weird seeing myself on camera. My wife would tell me, this isn't how you are in front of people. Like, you're just kind of, and you're having to deal with that like this camera me I'm having to develop. But the more you do it, the more you get into it. And eventually you can upgrade equipment, because, eventually you're going to start nitpicking and you're going to say, hey, I want to sound better or something like that. But as far as this goes, I mean, this $125 lecture mic has all kinds of settings that I've found to be, just great. And every time I experiment and try something else, I go back to that mic. Now, somebody recommended, I think they've got like an H4 or something like that. I just think it's overkill. Like, if you're just recording yourself lecturing, this sort of thing would be the most that anybody would need, along with Audacity, which is a free tool. And that's something else we might want to play around with during the course, how to use Audacity to filter your audio.
Oh, there he is.
What's that?
Tom cut off for a second.
Oh, he's back.
I see him. Yeah.
So here's the mic that I use. This one actually has some coffee spilled on it right now. Fell off. But it's the blue Snowball microphone. It cost me $45 or $49, something to that effect. Great little thing. But, Tom, you talked about lecture. You guys both, and I've done it too, tackle some topics that kids don't typically get excited about in the classroom. for example, Tom, you just did a video on Baroque art, right? If it's not Baroque, don't fix it. Great lead in. But, you know, we've all done videos on things that are not necessarily the most exciting, engaging things for kids. I mean, we're history teachers, so sometimes, you know, there's some stuff that's really hard to get kids involved in. So, you know, what do you say to somebody who's maybe not a history teacher, but maybe a science teacher or a math teacher, or pick your topic where there's something that's going to be kind of dry, but you need to make a video about it. What do you do? What do you tell people to help them get over that little hump?
What I would say is that something that's not talked a lot about is engagement. And I think that if you're engaged, whatever the content is, that carries over to the screen, whether it's your voice or it's yourself. So I'd say number one, like, really be excited about what you're doing. And people will read that, whatever your personality is, whether you're, over the top or you're a little bit more unassuming. I think that connects with kids. And the other thing I would say is depends on your audience, but what I try to do is I really try to not dive too deeply into academic discourse, because a lot of times I'm figuring that the kids don't have a lot of context, at least a lot of the kids that I think that I'm trying to reach. So rather than talking a lot about the history, I try to find analogies. And I think that can be true in a lot of different curriculums, where if you talk in student discourse in their primary language, that a lot of times that can engage them and you can carry them over to the critical curriculum that you're trying to go over. So that's at least how I approach it, but everybody approaches it differently. But if you're thinking about engagement, I think that you're thinking about the right thing.
I was trying to talk while I was still muted there. It's two different styles that if you compare, if you go to Keith's YouTube channel, you go to Tom's YouTube channel, then you go to mine, you're going to see different styles across the board. Keith, I think you're a little bit more animated than either one of us are, either Tom or I.
And I think, we hear a lot of these like ed words like that are kind of thrown around. But, the concept of differentiation and really kind of giving kids an option in terms of what they can connect with. Because if they're not engaged, they're not learning. And there's kids that hate me, that they don't want to watch my videos. And I understand why, to be honest with you. That's why I think teachers should give kids a choice. Especially if you're doing a real kind of flipping scenario where you're assigning videos, give kids a choice so they can find the right YouTube EDU person that they can connect with if you're not producing videos.
Okay. Well, I'll share this fun little story from, probably 6 years ago now. I was going to be out of my classroom for a day. I was going to a conference, and I made a video for my students to watch with the substitute teacher while I was gone. And I came back the next day, and I would say a good handful of my students said, "Mr. Byrne, don't ever make us do that again." But when I went back and looked at the views on that video, now back then I was using a tool called blip.tv to host a lot of my videos.
I remember that. You
remember that? Yeah, I used it for, I don't remember what exactly, why I was drawn to it, maybe because I was just being geeky and I wanted to try something different. But I was putting a bunch of my videos on it. And when I went back and looked at the views of the video, I was getting views of that video later in the school year. And I made that video, I think, in November of that year. And later in the school year, I was still getting views of that video. And I know that they were all coming from my students because I didn't make the video public. I made it as an unlisted video that they could only see if they went through the classroom blog. So even though they hated it, they actually did use it. Or some of their friends did anyway. So Tom, what about you? Tom, what about you? Your style's a little different than either one of ours. How did you settle on the? I can't do my Tom Ritchie impersonation because I don't have a coffee mug with me. But So
Yeah, or the accent's off a little bit, but I'd be curious to hear that from a New Englander. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, when it comes down to it, I think that, you know, when people ask me, like, did you start doing this to educate people? Did you start doing this you know, for the money or anything like that? And really, I started doing this because I was bored and I wanted to challenge myself in some other way, and I wanted to learn something new. And it was just a way for me to innovate on my own terms because, you know, which I just did a video lecture on Immanuel Kant's What is Enlightenment essay. And really, a lot of times institutions can be draining. You know, those of us who teach, you know, which Richard, you have escaped the institutional, you know, four-walled school or whatever. And, you know, it's very rewarding, but at the same time, you're not really doing things on your own terms. And for me, video, and when we talk about engagement, it's like, first of all, you know, being engaged as a teacher and knowing like, hey, I'm delivering this lesson and I'm not confined to a bell. I'm not confined to any rules, that I can do this how I want to do this, and I can communicate how I want to communicate. And, you know, this is something that, you know, there's a guy, Paul Sargent, that does videos for AP Euro as well. Some students prefer his videos over mine. You know, some prefer mine over his, some, you know, mix and match, which I certainly encourage. And so the thing is, it's like I've said before, like, wouldn't it be great if students could choose their own teachers, you know, which Keith, Richard, you know, y'all have had situations, I'm sure, where, you know, there are students that, you know, would rather not be in your class. They'd rather be in someone else's class. You'd probably rather them be in somebody else's class. But, you know, the thing is about making videos and putting yourself out there is you develop an audience that really connects with you and likes what you're doing. And when they're asking you for stuff, you know, like, hey, will you make a video on this? You know, somebody saying, I want you to be my teacher. You know, sometimes somebody will tell me, I wish you could be my teacher. And I said, well, you know, if you're watching my videos and you're interacting with me, I kind of am your teacher. You know, so this is really, for me, the magic of online video is there's always going to be something else. And this video I just recorded on Immanuel Kant's What is Enlightenment, it's going to weigh in at about 20 minutes. And you know what? It won't be for everybody. There are some people that, you know, be like, that's too long. I'm not that curious about that. But, you know, sometimes it's rewarding just to, hey, I'm going to talk about something that I want to talk about on my own terms, and I'm going to see who it connects with. And also thinking about your market, you know, for me, it's, you know, which for Keith, you know, a lot of like New York Regents exam, like he's thinking about people who are, you know, not necessarily that interested in history, but, you know, are going, they need something to pass the exam. Whereas, you know, I make videos, a lot of it catering to AP students, but 1/3 of my views are from outside the United States. And then those that are inside the United States, a lot of those are university students. So, you know, when I make videos, I think, okay, I want kids that are taking AP European history or AP US history or AP government. I want those students to be able to feel prepared for their exam, but I also want this to reach somebody who is intellectually curious. And that's been really rewarding to, you know, have like adults watch your videos, or some of the kids, they go to college and they're like, I'm not even taking AP anymore, but I still watch Tom Ritchie's videos. And that is really cool when you've got that connection that, you know, was forged through somebody looking for something. Somebody needed something and they found something that otherwise wouldn't have been there. And to me, that's like really the biggest rush of this. But yeah, it's like when you're starting out, like, think about the topics that you really want to, you know, you really want to talk about. Or there are some things like, you know, I mean, I've got some, you know, I've got a state test in US history that my kids have to take. And I told my AP US history students this year, I said, when I have a video that's geared toward prepping for this state test, I'm not talking about it in class because it bores me. You know, it's like to talk, like basically to review for a state US history test that somebody else has created on their terms. I'm like, you know what? I made this video so that I can teach my class more on my own terms. And so that's, you know, that's a bit liberating as well. So I think that anybody thinking about taking this plunge now, you know, Keith's 10 years in, I'm about 5 years in. And I mean, it's, you know, it's been very rewarding, even though for, you know, at least the first year or so, very few people will probably be watching besides the people that you told had to watch it for a grade or something like that.
I just want to echo what Tom said really quick. It depends on the purpose. You know, if you're going in to a video and it's for that kind of state review, if you're gonna make it, be excited about it, you know, and talk to that kid where they are, because chances are that's a kid who probably doesn't love school, as opposed to when you make that more specialized video. I just made the New York City draft riot video. They're not going to show that in a Regents course, let me tell you. But like Tom, like I needed that creative outlet. I needed to dip into my history bones a little bit. So for whatever reason you're going to do it, be excited about it and reach that audience, whoever it is.
Cool. So let's wrap up with this short question, quick question. I've gotten this from a bunch of people who are interested in taking the class, and that is, how long is it going to take? And I've gotten it in two different ways. I've gotten it from one person who said, how long is it going to take to complete the class? And well, that's going to be at least 3 hours. It's going to be 1 hour per night for 3 nights in a row. And if you want to follow, and if you want to do some of the suggested activities that we have, it'll take you longer. But the other people were concerned about how long is it going to take me to actually make a video. You know, and for me, my answer so far has been, it depends on the kind of video that you're going to make. You know, when I make a screencast tutorial video, I usually have 3 or 4 shots through it, and the whole thing takes me 45 minutes or so to do, sometimes less, sometimes more, but generally around 45 minutes for that screencast style video. You guys are both live on the camera. Keith, your videos tend to be a little bit shorter than Tom's in terms of finished production length, but how long does it take you to actually make your videos? Keith?
Well, I've been doing it a long time. So, you know, for myself, you know, I did a 15-minute video that took me probably 8 hours to do. But I can pump out like a 5-minute video, like a great review video at this point in filming to editing to uploading, probably in 3 or 4 hours. But that first video, if you're going to be using a green screen and you're going to be editing for the first time, you know, you're going to have to put some time into it, no doubt about it. But what I do want to say is there's a lot of different types of videos, and it depends on your audience. But I do believe that, at least for my audience, like multimodality is really important, and that takes more time. Because I don't want to just have the kid learning from the words coming out of my mouth. A lot of what I do, I'm speaking with my body and with the green screen and with text and with moving images behind me and on top of me and sound effects and music. And there's a lot of I put into it in terms of multimodal literacies, because I'm trying to speak to different types of learners. But again, it depends on your audience. If you have like a really, you know, great AP class, they're not going to need as much multimodality, because they're going to be engaged with the words coming out of your mouth, or, you know, less images and that sort of thing. So if you're looking to do something short, like Richard is saying, you probably could get away with a couple hours and banging out a cool screencast. But if you're looking to do a green screen with a lot of multimodality, you know, you're going to carve a weekend out for the first time.
Yeah. And I will say that, you know, when I do it, even when I do a screencast, I actually have a plan for how it's going to go. You know, I often will write out, I have another laptop that sits right here usually, and I'll look at that to talk while I'm demoing things around the screen. Tom, how long does it take you to do something, and then we're gonna call it a night?
You know, it really depends, Richard, and that's one thing that I want to kind of emphasize as far as, you know, I like being on the camera. I think, you know, Keith actually mentored me when I had like less than 100 subscribers, like watched some of my stuff, gave me advice, and I was doing screencasts at first, and he said, hey, you've got a good screen presence. Get on the video. It engages people more. And so it does take some time, especially when I want good audio and to put everything together, put the screen track. But I have gotten aware recently unfortunately, you know, especially in AP US history, a lot of the dominant players there just do screencasts. And I've realized, you know what, if I'm doing something that's really like a surgical kind of thing, like, you know, my most recent video was about the French and Indian War as a turning point in US history, I thought, you know, this is a limited audience kind of video. So even though I usually do videos with me on camera, then, you know what, I'm just going to screencast this one. And that's okay. I think, you know, and my audience, you know, responds okay to that. I think you're just looking at your, you know, your market and who is this, you know, who is this going to? And if, you know, one of these days when I make an actual video on the French and Indian War that might be more general interest or something like that, you know, I may do something, you know, different. So, you know, there are times when it takes me several hours because part of it, you know, my slides are very elaborate. And so I spend a lot of time on that, Richard, where you have your computer there, you know, I've got these slides that I've already spent hours on by the time I'm actually recording. And, you know, that's one thing about recording video. It's made me so much more organized in my presentation. You know, it's just, you know, in terms of, yeah, Keith's saying not so much for him, but in terms of like, you know what, this has to make sense to people. I can't just go around and I can't read the room and figure out when people are confused. I can't ask the students questions to see if they understand what I'm talking about or if they're awake. So, you know, for me, that is, you know, so sometimes it can be a very quick process once it goes to video. But when I do the things where I'm on the screen, I've got the slide up there and I'm making the slide do different things, I'll talk about some things to kind of streamline that. But it definitely, if you're going beyond screencasting or just recording yourself talking and just posting it, it is going to be a time commitment. But the thing is, I find that it is very fulfilling, and that's why I continue to do it.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. So for folks who are interested in joining us for an in-depth look at how to teach with video, how to make the videos, to teach with the videos, and then how to do the assessment piece of it as well, join us starting November 27th. Every class will be live, but don't worry, they'll also be recorded. So if you have to miss a night, you can go back and watch a recording, or if you just really want to listen to it multiple times or watch it multiple times, you'll be able to do that too, which is an important thing. In fact, one of the cool, I'm rambling, but I'll share this. One of the cool things about how I host the recordings is that I can see when people pause and rewind the videos, and that happens a lot in live webinars. But of course, if you can make it live, that's even better because you can ask questions in real time. So it's November 27th. You can sign up at practicaledtech.com. You can find the link at the top of my Twitter feed. You can find it on Tom's Twitter feed. You can find it on Keith's Twitter feed. You can find it all over the internet. We will cover the internet with it. You can sign up. Hope that a lot of you join us. And if you haven't checked out Keith and Tom's YouTube channels, please do so. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you November 27th. Have a great night. Good night.
All right.